Hey there guys, and welcome back to Alex Invest. The markets were mixed today. They started off lower this morning, likely because of expectations of the Fed and some of the numbers there like GDP, inflation, and they weren't as bad as people were expecting. That's why the market started off low. But then once the numbers came out and they were more consistent with kind of what the Fed's been saying, how GDP and inflation might spike initially now, but then come back down to sort of lower levels again. And so that means that the Fed is likely not going to be raising interest rates for a while. And because of that, the market liked that, of course, and it recovered nicely from there. So we are still mixed today, but I do see good things moving forward because of that. Now, today I want to talk to you guys about MVMD, though, because I had that interview with their CEO just 2 days ago, and it went great, and I really understood everything a lot better. Now, I've been kind of trying to figure out what the easiest way to explain all of this technology is, because there's so many different aspects of it. You know, there's the ivermectin aspect and all the solubility stuff, and then there's kind of the vaccine aspect, and there's the how they're going to license it, and kind of the patentability of all of it, and it all gets very complicated. So what I'm going to do, because I filmed this video and I explained all the ivermectin, I explained the patentability, I explained all the vaccine stuff and everything, and it was too long and it was still confusing. So I'm basically going to just go over how the vaccine stuff works within MVMD, and hopefully through that it'll help you guys understand kind of the ivermectin aspect, how they're doing their license agreements and all of that. So let's get into it here. Here's the little diagram I made for you guys, a lot simpler than the last one I kind of made, and we're just going to look at vaccines here and how MVMD's technology, both their QuickSome technology and their QuickSol technology here, can be applied to vaccines. So essentially their QuickSome, right, we'll start with the QuickSome, is a dried liposome, and what that means is it gives them a different delivery method that is also more effective and more efficient, kind of, and the fact that it's dried is important here. Now, there are different delivery methods for this dried liposome, like you can take it orally, or it's in a powder form, or in any other form, and that's kind of where they get to here with putting it into a vial. Because when they put it into a vial, what they're hoping for here is that it's unaffected by temperatures, because they've currently got this in the works. They just sent off, as the CEO told me, is they just sent this off on the day of the interview with him to the FDA. So this is going to be the near-term catalyst for us here, is hopefully that the FDA comes out and says, yes, this does work. And then from that, basically the whole cold chain is going to be affected, because it's going to be basically unnecessary anymore. It's going to be redundant from here on out because of MVMD's technology. Now, so that's kind of one side there. And in this case, the reason they're not using their sublingual or oral technology, right, with it, because that's the other thing the liposome can do. The dried liposome is once it gets wet and you put it on your tongue, right, it gets wet, and then you absorb the drug like that. However, in this case, for vaccines, because the thing about IV is it's 100% bioavailable, and it's basically perfectly soluble as well, from what I understand. So basically what that does is it means that for vaccines here, in this polio example, it's better to get it through IV. So that's why, instead of having an oral injection or an oral intake here, what they do is they put this dried liposome in a vial, and then it's unaffected by temperatures, and from there they then don't need the cold chain, because they dry it, right, put it into a vial, they send it to wherever it needs to go, not in the cold chain anymore, and then wherever it is, it basically gets rehydrated, and then that is the vaccine that you then pull out and then put into whoever's getting that vaccine. So that's this side, and what it does is it solves a $17 billion problem. Let's just say it's a $17 billion problem. It could be more, could be a little less. Let's just say it's a $17 billion problem, right? So then that's the one side. So there's that. Now this can work on its own, just like that, just the way it is. Any vaccine company could say, hey, yeah, you know what? We need this to kind of get rid of this $17 billion cost we have to distribute our vaccine here, or a government would say that, for example, right? And they say, okay, we're going to make sure that whoever is making the vaccine uses this dried liposome technology, which MVMD then gets paid for, of course, because it's a license agreement. And they're going to get a high premium on that because they're solving such a big problem. And that's kind of the other thing there. Because it's a license agreement kind of per product, depending on, or like per drug here is probably a better word to use. So depending on what the drug is or what the product is, they're going to make more or less margin, which is what I put here, right? Depending on kind of the deal. So since this is solving on just the one side here, a $17 billion problem, they can expect a high margin for their kind of license here. Let's say they get a percentage of sales. That's going to be a high margin on that, right? Because it's solving such a big problem. Now, that's kind of goes into how their licensing works there as well, which is the other thing I wanted to explain, right? Is that kind of depending on which, like I was just saying, depending on which kind of drug, which product it is, the higher sort of value MVMD gives, the higher the margin or the value MVMD is going to get out of that license agreement. So big problem, big money for MVMD. Small problem, less money for MVMD. And so that's that side, right? And now we have the QuickSol here. And so what the QuickSol does is it makes things more soluble, right? And this, like what we just said with the IV, right? You don't need that, but for things like for ivermectin and stuff, you do. Now, that's not something we're going to talk about here because we're sticking to the vaccine stuff only. So for the QuickSol, though, what they were able to do is make a better aluminum adjuvant than what is currently on the market. Now, what that does is, as we can see right here, it essentially helps vaccines work better, work more efficiently, essentially so they don't get more solubilized because they're already in an IV form. But what they do is it basically is dose sparing, right? So you need less of each of the vaccine in order to kind of distribute that. Now, again, that's going to save these vaccine companies money because they don't need to use as much of the vaccine in order to kind of sell their products. And they can sell their product at either a lower cost or even potentially at a higher cost because they are able to dose spare here. So a company might come in here and say, well, you guys have a better aluminum adjuvant. You have this patented. We will license that from you and we will use that. And again, they're going to save, let's say, $3 billion here. And so again, that's a pretty big cost savings there for the company. And so this dose sparing has again given MVMD a very high margin because this is a high cost problem at, let's say, $3 billion. So that's kind of how this all works. Now, for the polio vaccine, again, because that's currently being distributed through the cold chain, and because they have a better aluminum adjuvant, you can bring these together now, and that's a very big issue that they're solving, which is basically solving polio because they can now distribute this vaccine out of the cold chain in third world countries where this is necessary, right? Now, polio, so that's how this all works here, essentially. Where we're getting now is the fact that we have one side of QuickSome, which can be used on its own, you know, for certain applications. And in this case, the application is that the cold chain gets removed. And for the QuickSol, again, there's their own application. They made this better aluminum adjuvant, which can be licensed out. And that in turn is also dose sparing. But now what they can do is they can use both of these technologies together and basically have a cost savings of $20 billion. And so again, they're going to get a high margin on that and a high license agreement. So, and a very good license agreement there. So what we start to see is these two products that can be used separately, but also can be used in combination with each other. And that's kind of where we get into other things like the ivermectin, for example, and insulin and stuff like that, because what they're doing with ivermectin, for example, and we'll go through this quickly, but I know most people don't watch the end of the video, so I decided to kind of talk about that first. So for ivermectin here, we have QuickSol making it more soluble, same with selamectin, making it more soluble, because these are drugs that weren't able to be injected, only taken in oral form, especially ivermectin, and so they can make it more soluble. That's the one side, they make it more effective, and the other side is the fact that they can make it more effective in an oral form, or they can use the IV injection, right? So both are more effective with the use of ivermectin. Now for insulin, for example, right now it's a shot, but say you use the QuickSol technology, right, to make it more soluble, make it more effective, and then you take the QuickSome technology and you make it an oral intake, so insulin becomes much easier to take and stuff like that, right? So that's kind of another thing. And now that they have a different delivery method here, in both of these, they're a different delivery method with this aluminum adjuvant, for example, as well. What they do is they can essentially repatent and patent kind of ideas or drugs that have already been patented before, and let's say their patent ran out, and because of this delivery method change, that's the key here, it's a different delivery method, so that's why they can repatent these products, because of the different delivery method here. And so that is also huge, because that really helps companies make a lot of money here, since they can kind of patent their products again, and there won't be other sort of products like this one on the market, and nobody else can kind of take that drug with that specific delivery method. Nobody can do that except for, you know, whichever company or vaccine provider or a drug provider will have. And that's kind of why this technology is so key, and it's going to be game-changing technology here, guys, because it's just something that these companies are obviously going to want, because it makes their product better, it saves them money at the end of the day, and they can also repatent their ideas and increase their market share, increase revenues from that. And that's kind of why I've been continually adding to my stock, or to MVMD stock, and making that a much bigger position in my portfolio. And you know, I would suggest you do the same, because I think we're going to see some big moves here, especially when FDA comes out with that approval of the cold chain idea there and all of that. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover with you guys today. I hope you guys did like the video. If you did, please like, subscribe, and leave me a comment as always. And other than that, I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I'll see you guys on Thursday.